My entitled sister abandoned her 3 children. So I raised them. Years later, the cold wind blew through the half-open window, brushing against my face as I stared into the distance. The memories of those difficult years flooding my mind. It all began 25 years ago, with my younger sister, Diana. Diana, always rebellious, always free-spirited, had left a lasting impression on everyone who knew her. She was never one to follow the rules or take responsibility for her actions. And as much as I tried to reach out to her, to understand her, our relationship always felt fractured, like 2 puzzle pieces that were simply never meant to fit together. Growing up, I was the eldest sister, the responsible one. My parents instilled in me values like hard work, empathy, and the importance of family. Diana, on the other hand, seemed to take a different path altogether. She wanted to live her life with complete freedom. By the time we graduated high school, I went off to college, wanting to better myself, while Diana chose to live with her wealthy boyfriend. Their luxurious lifestyle allowed Diana to live without worries for a while. At least, my parents were worried, but Diana made it very clear that she didn't care about their opinions. Her defiance was exhausting for our parents, who decided to give her the space she wanted. At the age of 20, Diana gave birth to twin girls. A year later, she had a boy. My parents were both happy and terrified. 3 children meant responsibilities, but Diana seemed oblivious to what that actually meant. She was still living in her boyfriend's large, beautiful apartment, not worrying about her job or her future. I think she thought her boyfriend would take care of everything forever. Unfortunately, life has a way of proving us wrong when we least expect it. Her boyfriend, who had always had a roving eye, cheated on her, and when Diana found out, she left him. He agreed to provide financial support, but he wanted nothing to do with the children, signing away his parental rights. I couldn't imagine how she coped with that, alone with 3 kids under 4 years old and no career. Despite our rocky relationship, I couldn't just stand by and watch. There were innocent children in need of stability, love, and a safe environment. I decided to step in and support Diana. It wasn't an easy decision. I was just beginning to establish myself in my career, making a decent but modest living. But the alternative, seeing those kids grow up in chaos, felt much worse. My parents, though financially strained, did what they could to help as well. Despite all the support, Diana struggled. Without a college degree or any experience, she was forced to work minimum wage jobs with long hours, which meant she wasn't there for her children. It seemed like every time I visited, the children looked more and more withdrawn. They craved attention, and they deserved it, but their mother was too busy, or just too disinterested, to provide that. I remember one particular visit that broke my heart. It was a cold, rainy afternoon, and I had decided to drop by unexpectedly. As I knocked on the door, I could hear the muffled sounds of children crying. When Diana opened the door, she looked exhausted, her hair disheveled, and her eyes hollow. The twins, Emma and Lily, were sitting on the floor in the living room, holding each other, while their little brother, Alex, was sitting in a corner, tears streaming down his face. Diana barely acknowledged me, mumbling something about a bad day at work before disappearing into her bedroom, leaving me alone with the kids. I knelt down beside them, wiping away their tears and trying to cheer them up. We played games, I read them stories, and I made them sandwiches for dinner. The smiles that slowly crept back onto their faces were worth every second. I stayed with them until they fell asleep, tucking them into bed and whispering promises that things would get better. As I left that night, I knew I had to do more. These children needed love, consistency, and someone who would put them first. I decided then and there that I would be that person, no matter what it took. As years passed, it became painfully clear that Diana viewed her own children as obstacles to her personal success. She dated sporadically, but relationships never lasted. She often blamed her children for these failed relationships, saying that no one wanted to date a woman with 3 kids. I tried to advise her to be kind, but she wasn't ready to listen. She'd lash out at the children, calling them the reason for her failed love life. My heart broke for them. They were scared of their mother, a mother who was supposed to be their shelter in a storm. Many times, I considered doing more, calling child services or even seeking custody. But as flawed as Diana was, her actions never quite crossed the line into outright abuse or neglect. At least by legal standards. And if I pushed too hard, I knew there was a risk she'd take the children far away. And I'd never see them again. So, I chose a different path. I decided to be there for them as much as I could. I was the aunt they could confide in. Someone who would listen, who wouldn't judge. They needed stability, even if it was only in small doses. And whenever they had problems at school or with their mother, they would come to me. One evening, I received a call from Emma. She was crying, her voice barely a whisper. She told me that Diana had yelled at her for spilling a glass of milk, calling her useless and a burden. My heart sank as I listened to her sobs. I reassured her that she was none of those things, that she was a bright, kind, and wonderful girl. After hanging up, I sat in silence, the weight of their pain pressing down on me. I knew I had to do something more. The emotional toll Diana was taking on her children was becoming unbearable. And I couldn't just stand by any longer. When the twins turned 18, they packed their things and moved in with me, followed by their brother a year later. The transition was a long time coming, and it was one of the most emotionally charged moments of my life. Diana was furious, claiming that I had wanted to steal her children all along. She accused me of undermining her, of turning her children against her. I stayed silent because I knew there was no use in arguing. The children chose me, not because I wanted to take them away, but because I was there when they needed someone. I gave them a choice, and they chose to walk away from the instability and emotional pain. For 4 years, they lived with me while attending college. My house became a home again, filled with laughter, late-night talks, and the messiness that only young adults can bring. It wasn't always easy, raising teenagers never is, but it was worth every second. Seeing them thrive, seeing them smile, was the only reward I ever wanted. One niece went into literature and became a teacher. The other opened her own hair salon, and their brother pursued his dreams of becoming a pediatrician. They all went their separate ways eventually, but not before we had 4 wonderful years under one roof. The day they all moved out was bittersweet. They were ready to face the world, and I was ready to let them fly. On my 48th birthday, I was surprised by a small party organized by the children. They told me how much they appreciated everything I had done for them and offered me a check, a token of their gratitude now that they were doing well. Tears welled up in my eyes. I never expected anything in return. For me, it was simply the right thing to do. They were just kids who deserved better. And I had the means, the space, and the love to give. Diana, however, didn't see it that way. I didn't think she'd care about what was happening in our lives. But it turned out I was wrong. The post I made online, thanking the children for their generous gesture, seemed to catch Diana's attention. She reached out, asking to reconnect with her children. She claimed she wanted to make amends, that she missed them. It would have been a touching sentiment if I believed it to be genuine. I didn't. Her timing was too coincidental. Now that the children were successful and financially independent, she suddenly wanted to reconnect. When I didn't respond, she called me. The conversation quickly turned into an argument. She accused me of stealing everything from her, her children, her chance at happiness, and now her wealth. I knew that this was not about love or reconciliation. It was about control, about feeling entitled to something that wasn't hers. After that call, Diana turned to social media, painting herself as the victim, accusing me of turning her children against her and taking what was rightfully hers. Some relatives, unaware of the true story, believed her. They called me greedy, telling me I should apologize. But I knew the truth, and so did her children. When they heard about the situation, they stood by me, reassuring me that I had done the right thing. I had been there when Diana wasn't, and nothing she could say would change that. This story isn't just about the sacrifices I made. It's about understanding what family truly means. It's not about blood, but about love, support, and consistency. Diana was their mother in name, but she never acted like one. Her actions, her choices, shaped the way her children saw her. By the time they were old enough to decide for themselves, they chose to walk away from her toxicity. And even then, I couldn't hate her. I pitied her. She had 3 wonderful children. Children who would have loved her unconditionally if only she had shown them the same love. She lost them not because of me, but because of her inability to see beyond her own needs. As the years have passed, I found peace in knowing that the children are doing well. They're living their lives, following their dreams, and building their futures. I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the strong, kind-hearted adults they've become despite the challenges they faced. And I'm grateful to have been part of their journey. Diana's story is a cautionary tale of entitlement and the dangers of putting oneself above the needs of those we love. Throughout her life, she prioritized her desires over her responsibilities. And in the end, she lost what mattered most, the love of her children. In contrast, my journey has taught me that true family is built on the choices we make every day, to be present, to support, to love unconditionally. To anyone watching, I want you to know this: sometimes, being there for someone doesn't mean grand gestures or material support. Sometimes, it's as simple as showing up, as being the person they can call when they're scared, confused, or just need to talk. Family isn't always about biology, it's about the people who choose to be there, no matter what. And if you ever find yourself in a position where someone needs you, even if it's inconvenient or difficult, consider stepping up, because years from now, when you look back, you won't remember the sacrifices, you'll remember the love, the laughter, and the unbreakable bonds that made it all worthwhile. I still remember the nights we stayed up late, talking about their dreams and fears. Emma wanted to be a teacher because she believed in the power of stories. She would sit on the couch, her eyes sparkling as she spoke about the books she wanted to introduce to her students. Lily, on the other hand, had a natural talent for styling hair. She would practice on her siblings, twisting and braiding their hair in intricate patterns. She dreamed of opening her own salon, a place where people could come not just for a haircut but for an experience, a moment of self-love. Alex, the youngest, had always been fascinated by science. He would sit at the kitchen table, his textbooks spread out in front of him, asking me questions about the human body and how it worked. He was determined to become a pediatrician, not just because he loved science, but because he wanted to help children. He once told me that he wanted to be the kind of doctor who made children feel safe, who made them smile even when they were scared. Hearing his passion, I knew he would make a difference in the world. Watching them grow, I realized that my role in their lives was more than just providing a roof over their heads. It was about nurturing their dreams, giving them the confidence to pursue what they loved, and reminding them that they were capable of achieving anything they set their minds to. I attended their school events, cheered them on at their sports games, and celebrated their successes, no matter how small. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of doubt, of exhaustion, of wondering if I was doing enough. But every time I saw their smiles, every time they came to me for advice or just to talk, I knew I was making a difference. There was one moment that stands out vividly in my memory. It was the day Emma graduated from college. She stood on the stage, her cap and gown swaying in the breeze. And as she looked out into the crowd, her eyes met mine. She smiled, a smile that spoke of gratitude, love, and resilience. In that moment, I knew that everything we had been through, the sleepless nights, the tears, the arguments, and the laughter, had led to this. She had made it, they had all made it, and I had been lucky enough to be a part of their journey. Life has a way of testing us, of pushing us to our limits. But it's in those moments of struggle that we discover who we truly are. I wasn't their mother, but I was their family. I was the one who showed up, who stayed, who loved them when it felt like no one else did. And in return, they gave me a purpose, a reason to keep going, a love that was pure and unconditional. To anyone out there who is struggling, who feels like they are not enough, I want you to know that you are. You are enough. Your love, your kindness, your presence, they matter more than you know. You may not see the impact you're making now, but one day, you will look back and realize that every small act of love, every moment of sacrifice, has shaped the lives of those you care about. And that is something to be proud of. Diana may never understand why her children chose me. She may never see the consequences of her actions, the way her choices pushed them away. But I have made peace with that. I have made peace with the fact that I cannot change her, that I cannot make her see what she lost. All I can do is continue to love her children, to support them, and to be there for them in whatever way they need. And as I sit here, reflecting on the past, I am filled with a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the challenges, for the love, for the moments that have defined my life. I may not have had children of my own, but I have been blessed with the opportunity to be a mother figure to 3 incredible individuals. And that, to me, is more than enough. After hearing my girlfriend talk about infidelity, I left without saying anything. She is looking for me, but I blocked her everywhere. In the stillness of a quiet Friday afternoon, the air felt unusually heavy, almost as though it was brimming with an unspoken tension. Our narrator, a diligent 38-year-old man who has spent the past 5 years deeply in love with his girlfriend Rachel, embarks on what he believes will be another weekend filled with camaraderie, laughter, and relaxation. For him, these weekend retreats have always been a simple tradition, a chance to bond with his friends at a lakeside cabin, to escape the daily grind, to recharge, and then return to the woman he envisions spending his life with. But, as he drives home a little earlier than expected, life as he knows it is on the cusp of a cataclysmic change. Expecting nothing more than a warm embrace and an evening filled with familiarity, he orders dinner from their favorite Italian place. It's a ritual, a gesture that signifies his return and his devotion. As he enters their shared space, the comforting hum of a homecoming, he hears Rachel's laughter, a sound he's always adored. But today, that laughter carries a sharp edge. It's filled with the kind of excitement he's never heard before. As he quietly approaches, eager to surprise her, fragments of her conversation catch his ear. She's speaking to someone about an evening that had seemingly taken place recently. Her words are laced with emotion, with vivid detail, as she describes a night out, one so intimate and exhilarating that it cuts through his heart like a blade. She recounts meeting a man on Tinder, sharing dinner, and enjoying a night that blurs the line between passion and betrayal. A few more words slip from her mouth, words that shatter the remaining vestiges of trust he held in her. In a moment of anguish, he lets the dinner he brought crash to the ground, an unintentional metaphor for the dreams and life they had built together. Rachel turns, shocked, her face a mixture of guilt and fear. But it's too late. In a state of despair, he retreats, gathering only what he needs from their shared home. Despite her pleading, he walks out without a word, leaving behind the echoes of his heartbreak and her betrayal. For the next few days, he isolates himself in a nearby motel, ignoring her frantic calls and texts. The friends he confides in are just as taken aback, struggling to reconcile the woman they knew with the one who would engage in such deception. They rally around him, offering support, but the void left in his heart feels insurmountable. Nights become a blur of sleepless hours, as he revisits memories of laughter, plans for the future, and even the engagement ring he had bought, intending to propose on the 4th of July, just around the corner. As the shock begins to ebb, he realizes he needs closure, not for her, but for himself. Summoning the last of his strength, he arranges to meet Rachel in a public setting, with a trusted friend nearby for support. She arrives early, eyes red-rimmed from crying, desperately trying to apologize, to explain, to rationalize. Her words become a mix of justifications and confessions. She claims to have acted out of suspicion, convinced that he might have cheated on her during his trips. This flimsy reasoning only fuels his frustration, and he confronts her, demanding the truth. In a heartbreaking confession, she admits that this affair wasn't a singular mistake but a pattern, a secret life she had been leading each time he left. The pain is almost physical, a crushing weight that squeezes his chest as he realizes the depths of her betrayal. The ring he intended to use for his proposal sits in his pocket, now a bitter reminder of what could have been. In the days that follow, he disconnects from her entirely. Friends, family, even his mother, who had once hoped for grandchildren from this relationship, extend their support, yet the wound feels far too deep. He moves back in with his mother temporarily, a situation he never anticipated but finds solace in during these turbulent times. Rachel's pleas fade into the background as he blocks her on every platform, choosing instead to focus on his path forward, though the journey is still hazy and painful. In his quiet moments, he reflects on how love can sometimes blind us, making us overlook the subtleties that hint at deception. Rachel's betrayal becomes a personal lesson, a cautionary tale of trust misplaced, love taken for granted, and the strength one must summon to rebuild after being broken. Weeks turn into months, and gradually, life begins to take on a new rhythm. The narrator finds himself spending more time with old friends, rekindling hobbies that he had once put aside. He starts going for morning runs, a small effort to clear his mind and reclaim his sense of self. The physical exertion becomes a metaphor for the emotional struggle within. Each step forward is hard, but it's progress. He also picks up painting, something he hadn't done since college. His early works are dark, swirling with reds and blacks, depicting the tumultuous emotions inside him. But slowly, brighter colors find their way onto his canvas, a symbol of the healing that, though slow, is very real. One evening, while visiting a local art gallery, he strikes up a conversation with a woman admiring the same painting. She's kind, with a quiet demeanor, and there's something about her that puts him at ease. They talk about art, about life, and about the strange ways the world brings people together. It's not love at first sight. He's not ready for that, but it's a connection. A reminder that life holds beauty even after the darkest moments. They exchange numbers, and over time, a friendship blooms. During these months of healing, he also learns more about himself, his boundaries, his values, and what he truly wants from a partner. He understands now that love is not just about the big gestures, like proposing with a ring on the 4th of July, but about the small, everyday acts of respect and trust. He thinks back to the moments he overlooked, the times Rachel had seemed distant or evasive, and he realizes that trust is not something to be taken for granted. It must be nurtured, protected, and reciprocated. A year after that fateful day, he finds himself back at the lake, standing by the edge of the water. The cabin, once a place of carefree memories, now holds a different meaning. It's a place of reflection, of growth. His friends are there too, supportive as ever, and they raise a toast to resilience, to love lost and found, and to the future that lies ahead. The ring he once carried is now gone. He sold it and donated the money to a charity that helps victims of emotional abuse, finding a sense of purpose in turning his pain into something meaningful. As the sun sets, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, he feels a sense of peace he hadn't thought possible. The woman from the gallery, now a close friend, is there too. She smiles at him, and he smiles back, not because he's moved on completely, but because he's learned that moving on doesn't mean forgetting, it means accepting, growing, and finding joy in the moments that life continues to offer. Throughout life, we encounter stories of love and loss, some romanticized and others rooted in the painful reality of human flaws. Our narrator's experience resonates with countless others who have faced similar betrayals. One woman, for instance, shared how she uncovered her partner's affair after discovering unusual charges on their shared credit card. The trust that once bound them shattered, but in rebuilding her life, she found a renewed sense of self-worth. Another man recounted a relationship where his partner frequently accused him of infidelity, only for him to later discover she was projecting her own guilt. These tales illuminate a common thread. When love is genuine, it seeks honesty and openness, not suspicion and deceit.